Welcome to First Class Fantasy. I am Theo Greminger, joined as always by Billy Muzio, and today we're joined again by Bradley Stalder. A couple weeks ago, guys, we hit the running back position hard and heavy with Bradley. That was a lot of fun, so we said let's roll it back. And we didn't really give Bradley his position of choice. We sort of told him we're doing tight ends because Billy Muzio, not a fan of the tight end position in general. He actually thinks it should be a flex position. And you shouldn't have to pick a tight end. But we're going to help you today with your tight end process. Bradley, how are you doing today? How's everything on your end?
Doing great. Just had a great Thursday with the fam. Went to a science center, enjoyed it. You know, this is the time to I'm off for the next couple weeks and then back to the school grind. So it's fantasy, it's family. That's what summer's all about right now.
Yeah, I'm taking a little family trip this weekend, little Hershey Park action. Shout out to everybody on the East Coast. You Midwesterners and West Coasters are missing out on a wonderful Hershey Park trip. But Billy Muzio, what do you got going on?
I'm just hanging out here, Theo, just podcasting with you, updating the rankings, projections. Got to get the cheat sheet here updated for the weekend. People are going out to the draft in the streets. Want to make sure they have the most up-to-date sheets from us inside the rookie guide that you and the team have put together. So outside that, I'm just here to say, F the tight end position, Theo.
That's right. That's right. Well, Billy, we're going to build you up this year. Billy is one of the best rankers around, but doesn't really always feel confident about his tight end pick. So today we're going to talk about sleeper tight ends. We're going to talk about rookie tight ends. We're going to talk about it all. And then we're going to tell you about some players that we're going to make a big part of our draft process, guys that we view as big-time ADP values. So let's just start it off, guys. Let's talk about the sleeper tight ends. And every single year, we see impactful tight ends off of the waiver wire. We remember the Dalton Schultz top 3 tight end season. Last year, Trey McBride was available on so many waiver wires, even in FFPC, Billy. Trey McBride, I even got him in an FFPC Dynasty league off the waiver wire, if you can believe that. It happens every year. We don't always project the position as well as we do some of the other positions, and guys sort of just break through. So let's start out with our guest, Bradley. Bradley, if you had to pick a tight end who is outside of tight end 2 land right now on Underdog in terms of ADP, that you think at some point people are going to be picking up during the regular season, who would it be?
I think it's going to be Greg Dulcich for the Denver Broncos. And we liked Dulcich a couple years ago. He was a rookie, not this past year, but the year before. So this is his 3rd year in the league. Day 2 draft capital. So he's got the draft capital that we like. And there was a little bit of worry this offseason. Is it going to be Lucas Kroll? No, it's clearly Greg Dulcich. His rookie season, he was number 3 among tight ends in target depth, 3rd in deep targets, 7th in air yard share, 11th in air yards, and 13th in target share as a rookie among tight ends. And he was injured all of last year. People have forgotten about him, but there's really no other meaningful tight end on this roster. Dulcich is the answer, and he will be a very quick waiver pickup after week 1 or 2 when he's getting the majority of tight end snaps, when he's getting the routes, when he's getting the targets, because we've lost Jerry Jeudy in the middle of the field. Jeudy was very much a slot guy who was winning middle of the field, and now this is going to open up Dulcich. I'm telling you, very early in the season, he's going to be a quick waiver pickup for you in the tight end position.
Shout out to the Lucas Kroll drafters out there. And a year ago at this time, Billy, in a lot of dynasty leagues, you could have gotten Trey McBride for Greg Dulcich and probably gotten a little something on top of Trey McBride. There was a little enthusiasm, joker position, all that kind of stuff. Billy, who you got? Who is your tight end that you view as a early waiver wire pickup?
I am going to go back to the steady old faithful in Zach Ertz and the Washington Commanders offense. The rookie tight end who has joined him, Ben Sinnott, is going to be, I think, eased in. I think he's going to start earning reps, but out of the gate, I think we're going to see Zach Ertz kind of dominate the tight end touches. You go back to even just as last year, of course, he injured in the middle of the year, only played 7 games. But if you go back to 2022, he finished as the tight end 6 in fantasy points per game. 2021, the tight end 10 in fantasy points per game. I know he's getting a little older. He's on a new offense here, but there is quite of a lot of targets available for him to take over here, and everyone wants to focus on the shiny new toy. But I do think that there is a lot to be said about a veteran tight end who has been proven inside of the NFL. Looking at his metrics from 2023, he had a total of 2 top 12 weeks inside the tight end position. And he had a total of 4 inside the top 20. So I think that overall, Zach Ertz here is a value. He is free in drafts. You can get him literally in around 18 and underdog, and probably sets up for, a 12 to 13% target share inside this offense.
Billy, Ben sent it to the moon, but you can enjoy the first 4 weeks of the season with Zach Ertz before he turns into complete dust. I do think there's an argument to be made, though, that he will be good to start the year. And that's all we really need when we're diving into that part of the draft, where other guys are going to appear on the waiver wire.
It is Ben Sinnott, because it's not going to be Ben in the beginning of the season. But
love it, Billy. I'll go Jelani Woods.
Stick to the puns and not the tight end rankings there, Billy.
Look at these guys. Jelani Woods is the guy for me. You're starting to see like mixed messages out of Indianapolis Colts camp about there's a tight end competition. There's all these names being mentioned. A healthy Jelani Woods, to me, is the one that's going to emerge from this group. And we always talk about it, Billy. We've talked about it with our friend Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm. The two real drivers of tight end success are either being top 2 on your team in targets, but when we get down to this range, it's difficult to find those guys. The other driver, touchdown scoring. And I think there's an opportunity for Jelani Woods in an offense that could be living in the red zone to just thrive on touchdowns. End of the year, we might look up the stats and we say, whoa, Jelani Woods, he had 8 touchdown catches and didn't do a whole lot else. But at the end of the day, that might help you out depending on where you're drafting. So we've always liked Jelani Woods throughout the process. Same draft class as McBride, Dulcich, all the guys we're talking about, Chiga Okonkwo. He's had trouble staying on an NFL field, but he's healthy. This is sort of a next level size guy, athleticism guy. And that's what we want to look for at the tight end position as well. Before we take a break, let's go with one more question. Taysom Hill. This is a polarizing one, and it's a little bit triggering for some people. Some people are going to say, Theo, why are you talking about Taysom Hill? In my league, he's a quarterback. This is so annoying that you're talking about him. But guys, there's a number of leagues right now where he is tight end eligible. And Billy, including the NFFC and including Sleeper. So there's a large segment of fantasy football managers who can draft Taysom Hill as their tight end. And then you factor in the Kendre Miller news, where Kendre Miller is really struggling, getting called out by Allen as a guy who can't stay healthy. Taysom Hill is interesting. Bradley Stalder, if your league has Taysom Hill tight end eligible, how are you treating him?
I absolutely want him as, a tight end 2 in my roster. In the tight end premium, like FFPC leagues, where it's full PPR, though, I do have him a little bit lower because he's going to get his value from the rushing. And from those types of he's going to get a lot of yards, and he has that touchdown upside. So the spike weeks matter more in like a half PPR format, but in full PPR, he's not going to be used as the traditional tight end. That's Juwan Johnson's role. So for him, I still want him on my team. The spike weeks exist, but more in a best ball format, it's going to be really hard to start him confidently as your tight end 1. That's just how I'm approaching him, because if he's not getting the receptions and the target share that's more consistent, it could be hit or miss. And I agree with you. The Kendre Miller news is very bad news for Miller, and it's good news for Kamara, good news for Taysom Hill. But I'm not ready to anoint Hill as like a top 24 or top 12 tight end. He is in the top 24 though, and should be rostered.
Billy, anything to add on that one?
No, Bradley and I have talked at lengths about Taysom Hill off the air, and we're both, similar range. I think he's my tight end 15 right now. I agree with what Bradley said. If we're in, a tight end premium league, and he gets dinged a bit there for his lack of receiving skills, but in the rushing department, I mean, he's going to see an uptick. He had 401 rushing yards last year, 575 the year before, 11 touchdowns on the ground over the previous 2 years. I think I recall a certain podcast talking about Kendre Miller struggles a couple weeks ago, and look at I think that the overall consensus is just a little bit late to the party here when we are looking at players and trying to identify edges. And so I think Taysom Hill slides into that respective role as kind of a running back tight end hybrid, especially with the injuries at the tight end position. So I think that he has a chance to exceed expectations where he's eligible at the tight end position inside of your drafts. And if he is, it's kind of a cheat code in the meantime, and you should take advantage of it.
Okay, so I'll make a counter argument that this year there's been nothing but positivity with Clint Kubiak and Taysom Hill. There's been Taysom Hill talking up his new role, Dennis Allen talking about his new role, and there's been an argument with this in the Saints organization where the splits, games where Taysom Hill does really well, the Saints win. So they're going to try to get him involved early and often. If we knew that he was getting like, let's say he gets 33 catches like he did last year at the tight end position, but the rushing attempts improve and they do a lot more manufactured rushing attempts, I could see him sneaking into tight end one land again. Billy, I love where you have him ranked at tight end 15. And I'll say this, you should, if you're playing sleeper or NFFC and you're in a deep format, just draft him, because if they're going to utilize him like from the get-go and he becomes something like of a double-digit touches guy every game with manufactured rushing attempts, guys, Juwan Johnson's hurt right now. This is good. This could be a really interesting player. You could just see it now. Week 1 is going to be like a 20-point Taysom Hill week. Everybody goes and spends waiver wire money on him, and then he stops after like week 4. But early on, I think he could help you out.
I definitely need to revisit his attempts, because you just look at his history. I mean, 81 attempts on the ground in 2023, 96 in 2022, 70 in 2021. I had kind of baked in some regression because I thought they were going to get the other backs a little bit more involved. I do think now that looking at the projections, he might even be low now inside of our projections, because I only had him projected for 13% of the rushing share. If we adjust that to
I have him at 16%. So
yeah, if we just been 16, that's what I was going to say. I just put him in at 16%, and that takes him all the way up to tight end 12. So he actually is back in tight end 1 now with that 16%.
Yeah, and I think it was the way that Kubiak's talked about it was, it used to be Taysom Hill was a game situation guy, and they want to sort of get away from that and use him every game and kind of put the pressure on defenses. And they don't really have the players, guys, right now, outside of Olave and Kamara and Rashid Shaheed. But other than that, like, you need kind of weekly touch guys. And we were kind of projecting Kendre Miller, even a bad Kendre Miller season, Billy, we were still projecting him to get some touches. Sounds like he might just get phased out. So remains to be seen. Let's take a quick break, guys, and then we're going to keep diving into the tight end position. We're even going to talk about the greatest tight end prospect of all time, Brock Bowers, when we get back.
Hey, it's the Podfather. I have great news. The draft kit is live. It is world famous. Why? Because it is the best resource for winning fantasy football championships that exists. There are rankings and cheat sheets for every format you can imagine. We have projections both at the team level and the player level. And wherever you are, you can click on a player, open them up, and see in-depth written analysis about what to expect in fantasy football from that player this year. And then you can click on the team and you can get even more in-depth analysis, all the drivers of fantasy production, both in a positive and negative direction for that team, including a signature trend. And the graphics are incredible. So these team insights, they give you the team level projections, the vacated targets, the vacated ARs. And we added a bunch of features. I mean, individual cheat sheets for Theo and Billy and Dario. So you can take your favorite analyst and download their personal draft cheat sheet. And then in the commissioners section, Memphis Young lays out everything you need to know to manage a league, the best minds in the industry contributing analysis. It's certainly not the most inexpensive draft kit on the market, but it is the best. PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit, PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. Go get it.
PlayerProfiler.com/draft kit. And may I also add that you get a cheat sheet this year from our own Bradley Stalder. And guys, I think we got to be updating our rankings pretty soon, because we are in training camp and we're actually starting to get some actionable news kind of trickling in here and there. Let's talk about Brock Bowers, though. You have the Vegas Raiders. You have Brock Bowers. This was a guy who, by all accounts, even if you don't really love him, he's still one of the better tight end prospects we've seen in the last 10 years. Now he steps onto a team where Jacoby Myers, obviously Devontae Adams, change at the running back position. We don't necessarily know how much Zamir White will be utilized as a receiver out of the backfield. And that's pretty much it. Michael Mayer playing behind Brock Bowers. And then a couple guys at the wide receiver 3 spot sort of vying for time. So, Billy Muzio, where do you currently have Brock Bowers projected to finish in your rankings?
I'm actually in on Brock Bowers this year.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not in on a lot of rookie tight ends normally. I was in on Laporta last year, not so much Kincaid, but Bowers right now comes in as tight end 11. I have him slightly behind Jake Ferguson, slightly ahead of Taysom Hill. He's kind of in his own tier here. And I have to say, especially with the uncertainty at the quarterback position right now, it's going to favor Brock Bowers. I mean, we see quarterbacks, when they struggle, they lean on their running backs, they lean on their tight ends, they lean on anyone who's got short intermediate routes out in the flats or in the slot. And I think that Brock Bowers is going to be one of the main benefactors of this. You also look at the receiving options they have, as well as the running back options. Devontae Adams, of course, the clear cut number 1. You got Jacoby Myers, but then outside of that, there's a lot of uncertainty as the number 3 position. And I mean, I think that is pretty much Brock Bowers, and week in, week out could arguably the number 2 at the receiving option. And so this is probably an offense we're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, I think, because they have two good tight ends, and I think they're going to be able to deploy them both simultaneously. I think Brock Bowers will probably use more as a jumbo X and leverage him and create mismatches.
I love it. I wish you would have said higher than tight end 11, but I love everything else you said. Bradley, where do you see Brock Bowers finishing?
I have Brock Bowers at tight end 15. I'm a little lower, but Theo, hear me out. It's not because he's bad. It's because I believe that he's just in this same tier. You'll be happy with the projections. Just give me a second. Bowers, 89 projected targets, 56 projected receptions, almost 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. The problem with Brock Bowers is an organizational one. We do not have trust in the Raiders as an organization to utilize him fully and immediately. We know that Devontae Adams is the major stone in that knapsack, and then Jacoby Myers is also very important to that team. So I don't hate Brock Bowers, but I think that you can get other values in that same tier for what type of production year 1 you're expecting from Bowers. I don't expect that they'll pull Michael Mayer off the field a ton. And so it's going to be a lot of, as Billy said, 12 personnel. He's going to be sharing a little bit with Mayer. So I don't hate Brock Bowers, but I think we need to temper the ceiling expectations in year 1. It's Aiden O'Connell or it's Gardner Minshew. They're not going to be in the red zone a ton. That's the problem, is these spike week possibilities are very, very scant when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders. We're not talking about a top tier offense. So my concern with Brock Bowers is more organizationally than with his talent.
Okay, I'll say if you're projecting to get 90 targets, then you're pretty bullish on the tight end position in general, would be my takeaway. If a 90 targeted tight end with that kind of talent is only your tight end 15, I think it kind of speaks volumes to the position, where we saw a bunch of guys go over 200 PPR points last year. Usually we see like 3. We saw 6 last year. But I'll say I'm going to be a little more bullish than both of you guys. I think it's a life finds a way argument with Bowers. I do like where Billy said where they're going to line him up in different spots. I don't think Michael Mayer is going to have a real impact on what we see out of Bowers. I think Bowers is going to be fast-tracked. They were even using him on manufactured rushing plays in some of the OTAs. So for me, I like his chances in the red zone. I also think for me, it's they're going to be passing a lot more than we saw last year. I don't think Zamir White is Josh Jacobs. I think that they're going to try to treat him stylistically like Jacobs to an extent, but they're not suited to use the running backs like they have in years past. I think they're going to have to lean on their tight ends and their wide receivers. That's the strength of their team right now. Between Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, and Brock Bowers with a little bit of Michael Mayer mixed in, I think that's really the strength of what you're going to see out of Las Vegas. So I think he's going to give us a top 8 tight end season right out the gate. He's been a fast-track guy pretty much his entire time. So remains to be seen. We'll have to have a midseason first-class fantasy and discuss Brock Bowers, how well he's doing and all that kind of stuff, and revisit this segment. I want to start with Billy on this one. Really weird weird kind of coincidence here. You have the two LA teams, the Chargers and the Rams, where there's no tight ends being drafted whatsoever. Not even on underdog. Like, you hardly ever see an 18th round Will Dissly, an 18th round Colby Parkinson. Where are you at if you had to pick one of these guys emerging, Billy, and being fantasy football viable from both teams combined? Who would it be?
I think it's Will Dissly. We kind of saw him take a step forward last year. He started getting a little bit more involved, but they go out and actually acquire him. They sign him. And this is an offense that has the most available targets at all positions, pretty much open for grabs in the receiving game. And the Chargers, we know Justin Herbert has always liked the tight end in his offense. He loses all of his trusted sources outside of Josh Palmer. But the other, main weapons are gone. So it really is anyone's game. In the past, when we've seen, Roman and Harbaugh together, they've ran the ball, but we also don't have the cream of the crop to choose from in terms of running back talent. So they may be forced to throw more than they have in the past. And I think that Will Dissly is probably one of the better options in terms of their tight end options to emerge as the lead here. Again, it's not somebody I'm going out and targeting in 18 round drafts. I think you could, throw in a few rosters that maybe you're, taking a few of these guys like last 3 rounds and taking a 3 tight end build with a couple of these LA guys. And I think that you could do it. I wouldn't make a habit out of it, but if you want to just, throw your name in the hat and get a few shares, I wouldn't argue against it.
Bradley, which way are you going?
Yeah, it's got to be Will Dissly. It's very, very clear that the LA that LA is looking to run the ball. The Chargers are looking to run the ball. That's going to be the Harbaugh offense. And who blocks the best? Who is going to stay on the field? It's going to be Will Dissly. Last year, Will Dissly was tight end 2, the tight end 2, only behind George Kittle in run block PFF grade, and he was tight end 3 in tight end pass block grade. He is not going to get off the field, so he's going to be blocking there, and then he's just going to roll out. He's just going to get open. He's going to get a couple targets here and there, and they signed him to a 3-year deal. He's not going to be off the field. We have concerns about Hayden Hurst because of his concussion issues. I mean, if you remember last year, Hurst had to take off most of the season because of post-concussion syndrome. There's no guaranteed money. The money is guaranteed to Will Dissly. So a player who's had some spike weeks in the past for the Seattle Seahawks, Will Dissly is the late round guy that I'm taking a couple shots on.
Yeah, I like the argument for Dissly. For me, it's going to be Colby Parkinson. I think he's like, you bring up like being on the field the whole time. It sounds like to me like Parkinson's going to be a big part of the offense. Now, does that mean he's getting a lot of targets? I don't know, but I do think he's going to be on the field enough that he's going to be helpful. Where I've actually taken him in a couple of best ball drafts here and there, where I think he's going to have some useful weeks. And the thing about the Sean McVay offense is you'll run into these weird weeks where a kind of an off the radar guy will have a big impactful fantasy game. Higbee was different. Higbee actually had talent. But you'd go to those Higbee games where it would be like Higbee nonstop. You had some Tutu Atwell games. There's just a Demarcus Robinson. These guys find a way when they're on the field and McVay sees a mismatch or something he can exploit in the defense. I think Parkinson could be that one, but we're never going to get that 2 minutes back on Will Dissly and Colby Parkinson, guys. Let's move on to something a lot more fun. Let's talk about top 8 tight ends. And we've talked about this, Billy, and we could have kept this at the top 6, but I included the top 8 because there's a lot of enthusiasm for guys like George Kittle, Evan Ingram, and even a couple guys behind him. It's a deep year for tight ends. The whole argument that you need to draft a tight end early or late this year kind of goes out the window because there actually are a couple of these low-end tight end ones that we are really into, and I think for good reason. We could talk about that for a while, but let's specifically look at the top 8. Bradley, which of the top 8 ADP values are you least likely to draft?
Least likely? Based on value, it's Dalton Kincaid. Based on value, it's Dalton Kincaid. Yeah. It's look, the target shares are just going to be too flat. We saw the splits even in the second half of the season with Dawson Knox still on the field. I know that Theo is not a believer in the athletic reports.
Comes on First Class Fantasy and just destroys my guys, Billy.
I'm anti Brock Bowers, anti Dalton Kincaid.
Here, I'll do it for you, Theo. I'll do it for you. I'll do it.
Look, here we go. So, there's not a clear wide receiver one on the Bills. I get it. But the value that you're investing in, and Dalton Kincaid is just so high, and the return has to be your Travis Kelce previously. It has to be a Mark Andrews. And are we confident that that's going to happen? I'm not. He's going to be pulled off the field for various reasons. He was one of the worst pass blockers, and they're going to ask him to do other things. They're going to ask him to move around the formation. I get that. But then they're going to also pull him off the field a lot, and that's going to hurt the target share. It's going to hurt your opportunity. I am not as in on drafting Kincaid as I am like an Evan Ingram. Like, I'll wait. Essentially, the problem with Dalton Kincaid is he's caught in this awkward middle between where I want to draft Mark Andrews along with Lamar Jackson, but it's between Andrews and then the fall to Ingram. I just am not a believer in the value that the bottom of that tier can provide me with Ingram or Kittle in where I'm drafting tight ends at that spot.
You're not going to have to block when the ball's coming your way. Is that am I right?
I was going to say, this is great.
Come on, you got to take this one, Billy.
You
Billy,
can
eviscerate him.
Yeah, I was not a Kincaid believer last year. I was in the same boat as Bradley last year.
You broke down late. You added a little Kincaid late, Billy.
Yeah, I added some late, but he was just being way overdrafted last year. This year is a different story. So when we look at NFL and trends and what coaches are going to do with players, we can't always look at the past history, especially when the history is so little, like it is with Dalton Kincaid. Coaches change from year to year, offenses change from year to year, and so do players' involvement in the offense. When we look at the overall targets available, this is an offense that is going to rely on him as a pass catcher, not a blocker. So that's fine. They can throw somebody else in line to block. I want him to be as a receiver on the field, and they're going to have to do that this year. We have 317 targets that are up for grabs. This is second in the NFL, only behind the Los Angeles Chargers, who have 395. The tight end position is the only position without the turnover here in Buffalo, with only 3 available targets. So it's not something that's going to be unfamiliar for them. They're going to be able to roll him out more earlier and often inside of the receiving game and rely on him inside of this offense. So last year we saw him run Kincaid out of the slot 49.1% of the rate, which is number 2 at the position. I think this is something we're going to see him do a lot this year. He had the 11th most routes ran as a rookie last year at the tight end position. He had the 13th highest route participation as a rookie. And all these numbers are just going to go up and up and up as they are needed now, even more so in 2024. So I am a big believer in Dalton Kincaid this year at a necessity of the offense. And I do think that we can throw out a lot of the information we saw last year and how they utilized him, because it's not relevant now with all the turnover they've had in this offense.
Second most vacated targets of any team in the NFL is the Buffalo Bills. Billy, who's your fade among the top 8?
I don't really want to fade anybody. Do I have to?
Yes.
Oh my God.
But you don't. Well, okay, we can add a caveat on this.
Okay.
It's we'll say least likely to draft among the top 8. Doesn't mean you think that they're going to fail. You can reference any ADP you want here. Who's the player that you know?
Can you read me the top 8? Good.
You're not actually just sprinkling across your 8 guys in your even exposure. You're not that guy. You're not Mr. Portfolio Muzio.
Pretty close.
I have exposure to all 8 tight ends equally.
Who do you have number 8? Who's number 8 on this list for now?
Okay, so I'll read them off.
Yes, please.
I'll go underdog. Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Mark Andrews, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, George Kittle, Evan Ingram. Of those 8 tight ends, and I'll say you can add a little FFPC context if you want. Right now, your Laporta, Kelce, McBride, Kincaid are all inside of the second round. Mark Andrews right at the 2-3 turn. Evan Ingram in the 3rd round towards the end of it. Kyle Pitts in the mid-3rd round. And then you get George Kittle like the 5th round. That's pretty much the way the cookie crumbles in the FFPC.
I think it's got to be Pitts for me.
Okay. That's fair.
I think to Bradley's point, he mentioned Evan Ingram, who I love this year. I think is a huge breakout last year. There's a ton of available targets here as well, 251 in this offense. And I think we saw him last year kind of as that number 2 option in the passing game. And that's not changing anytime soon with the departure of Calvin Ridley. We just talked about Kincaid. We don't need to talk there. George Kittle's my boy. And even in a down year is being ranked down as low as he is. And with the potential departure of Brandon Ayuk, he's probably going to climb up even higher. Laporta, Kelsey, all, going to be at the top of the charts here. So I think when you break down the offense, I think the uncertainty that we have inside the Falcons offense is exactly how everybody's been deployed. As much as I like Kyle Pitts, and I think this is probably the year he does it, I'm more confident this year than I ever have been in him in the past. I've never been on the Kyle Pitts train. But I think this is the year. If he is going to do it, it's going to be this year, but he's probably the odd man out of these top 8 for me.
Yeah, and I think it's fair, Billy, if I'm understanding you correctly. It's a little more FFPC when I got it brought up that context of where he's going. Like, there's certain formats where you're going to be able to get him later. Yeah. So I'll say for me, guys, this one's going to be unpopular, but for me, it's Travis Kelce. And I'll bring up FFPC, where I'm having to take Travis Kelce as a top 15 pick in the FFPC. I'm not doing it this year. And it's a 35-year-old player. And I realize tight end's different when it comes to age. And certainly he was good in the NFL playoffs. But this is a guy where down the stretch had some very poor performances for us in fantasy. And guys, I'll say this. When I see a guy 35 years old go from 18.6 points per game down to 14.6 points per game, that's a 4-point drop despite the wide receiver competition being minimal. I'm out. I'm out this year. And if I'm wrong, if I'm a year too early on saying that, then I think it's right around the corner. I think Travis Kelce is going to have some very big games, but I have to use a top 15 pick on him in FFPC still. I'm not doing it. Other formats, I might be more willing to do so. NFFC, sleeper, like it's a little more palatable, but it's not for me when we talk about the tight end premium leagues. I just can't pull the trigger. And you're starting to see, Billy, some of those Laporta Kelsey combinations at the 1-2 turn. I really can't do that. I think that's a poor EV even in a main event. So there you go, guys. Now let's take it to a more positive. Who is this year's tight end 1 overall? Start with our guest, Bradley Stalder.
I have Sam Laporta as my tight end 1, 22% target share. I mean, we saw double-digit touchdowns last year, but even projecting regression down to 7 touchdowns for this year, I have him projected at over 1,100 receiving yards, 85 receptions. This is a player on one of the most dynamic offenses. This is the Jared Goff, like, middle of the field. He knows where his guy Laporta is, and it was just rookie year last year. We're all talking about, Dalton Kincaid is going to take a next step. Sam Laporta took 3 steps last year and is clearly, the tight end 1. He is the future, and we like what the Lions are doing. They didn't add any wide receiver competition. There's been a lot of JMO love this offseason, but JMO can take on the Josh Reynolds 60-something targets. That's fine. Sam Laporta, I have him projected at 118. I think we're in good shape for Laporta paying off the tight end 1 or about where he is in my tight end premium rankings. He's my number 9 player.
Now, 2 less games or two fewer games than Travis Kelce last year, Bradley. But how many more targets did Travis Kelce have than Sam Laporta? Because I think this is sort of a lot of people think of Laporta like you remember the highlights of him running wild on some long touchdown, and then you think picture Travis Kelce as this PPR machine. Target wise, where were they at? If you had to guess off the top of your head,
120 and 121, 23.
Yeah, probably about 120.
You're right.
Yeah,
it was 1 more target for Travis Kelce. So for me, that's the most. I'll go before you, Billy, because I had the same guy as Bradley. Sam Laporta, to me, when you look back at his season as a whole, that's the thing that stands out really the most to me. The tight end 1 finish, incredible. The touchdowns, incredible. The catches, incredible. Set all these records. But for a rookie tight end to command 120 targets, that he had the 5th most targets at the tight end position last year at 22 years old. And I love that you brought up Josh Reynolds had so many games where he was really impactful. And we were, we're talking about 65 targets from Reynolds gone. We're thinking Jamison Williams inherits some of those. But is Jamison Williams a 100 target guy? I don't think so. I think he's probably the 90. Were we giving him 90 targets, Bradley? Ish, 85, 90.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And
He's
we're
not
talking
a
about-
player that's going to command like maybe a 17%, 19% target share.
So we're talking about, I think that's the argument with Laporta. Is Laporta, I think I've seen a lot of people, including you guys, that are
86.
And I think a couple guys that I think are great rankers, great projections people, including yourself. Bradley, you nailed it. Like, you're projecting them similar targets as last year. What if that target total goes up 10%? Which is completely in the realm of possibilities for going from year 1 to year 2. So I think that for Laporta, I think the sky's the limit. I'm not sure he's going to have 10 touchdowns again, but I think that the catches overall are going to go up, and I think he'll become a more efficient player. So for me, I'm going to go with him as tight end 1. But like Billy says on several shows, you could have gone in a number of directions. Which way are you going, Billy, on this one?
So I guess I'm just going to mentally mess with everybody because you faded the guy, and I'm going to say he's going to be the tight end 1 this year, and that's going to be Travis Kelce. You guys kind of made my point for me. You talked about how involved Sam Laporta was, how great of a year he had. And if he maintains that, let's just say he maintains the 10 touchdowns, which is unlikely in my opinion. But if he does, okay, let's get him at where he was in fantasy points per game last year. He was number 1 at 239, and he played all 18 weeks. We're including week 18 here for a specific reason, because that's how it's tracked inside of the data. Now, if you look at Travis Kelce, who, in my opinion, had a down year, who averaged more fantasy points per game. He was number 1 in fantasy points per game, 14.6. He was number 3 in total fantasy points at 219. If you add his averages back in, he's actually tight end 1 in scoring because he missed weeks 1 and missed weeks 18. But to your point, he had a down year in targets. He was number 4 with 121. He had a down year across the board, and he only had 5 touchdowns, and he still finished number 1 position in fantasy points per game. It's hard to rank this guy any lower than 1 or 2 when you have the best quarterback in the NFL. These guys rely on each other in clutch situations. Mahomes always looks Travis Kelce first. And I think that everyone's kind of maybe over exaggerating on just how bad of a year he had. Yes, it was bad by his standpoint, but in the grand scheme of things, this is upwards of the best in the league still, even with the down year. And even if that down year continues this year, if he just plays the other 2 games, he's still tight end 1. So I have adjusted the rankings. They don't reflect inside the site, but he is officially back in the tight end 1 spot for Player Profiler on my rankings, at least.
So, guys, we revealed our tight end 1 overall predictions. Now we're going to talk about the tight ends that we want to draft as much as possible. Our favorite ADP values. Just like we did at the running back spot, we're going to do it at the tight end spot. Let's go around the horn here. Start with you, Bradley. Who is a tight end you love value-wise this year?
Love drafting Evan Ingram. Led the tight end position in targets last year. He's the cheapest among the big 8, we'll call it. And you can load up on all your other flexes, get an elite quarterback earlier, and get Evan Ingram at like 70, 75 overall and feel pretty good about it.
Billy, who you got?
We already mentioned his name earlier, but it's Dalton Kincaid. We talked about the available targets here, number 2 in the league in terms of availability. And Dalton Kincaid is going to be one of the main benefactors of this, and excited to see his role grow and develop here in 2024.
And I actually had Kincaid on my list as well. And I'll reference the ADP and FFPC is heavy, but it's other formats for me, guys. Underdog and also NFFC. I get such a gap between him and Laporta right now in NFFC drafts. So FFPC, it's expensive, but other formats, a ton of Kincaid is what I'm going to have. Bradley, who you got next?
Yeah, I've got Pat Freiermuth as another tight end I'm targeting. There's a lot of ambiguity behind George Pickens in terms of the pass catching options. Freiermuth was the tight end 12 just a couple years ago on only 2 touchdowns. He was injured last year, poised for a bounce back under Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin.
Billy Muzio, who is your second guy?
I also have Pat Freiermuth. He's my most owned tight end in the draft so far in 2024. I think he's going too cheap. As Bradley said, this was a back-end tight end 1 in 2022. Arthur Smith loves to throw to the tight end position here. I think Pat Freiermuth, as Bradley said, is probably the number 2 in this in this ambiguous receiving core, and I do think that he is going much too low in drafts.
For me, Evan Engram is my next player, and I know you're both bullish on him as well. Back-to-back top 5 tight end seasons for Evan Engram. The market still has him at tight end 8. He's definitely still affordable spot for me for FFPC if I get stuck at tight end. NFFC, great value. And Underdog, guys, probably the best value, 75th overall on Underdog. I have a ton of exposure to Engram. Bradley, give us your final must-draft tight end.
Yeah, Billy's called me late at night asking Bradley, what are you watching? And I said, Tyler Conklin film. And it's true because Tyler Conklin is a dude. He looks like a Viking, and he is the tight end 1 for the New York Jets. We've seen Robert Tonyan have a massive 10-touchdown season for Aaron Rodgers. If you're in on the Jets this year, Conklin could be the number 2 receiving option behind Garrett Wilson. We'll see how that pans out, but he's had 87 targets each of the last 3 seasons. There's only 2 other tight ends to do that. So give me some Tyler Conklin in 2024.
I can just picture it now. Mrs. Stalder picks up the phone and says, who are you talking to, Bradley? And it's Billy from Bend, Oregon. What are you wearing, Billy from Bend, Oregon? Khakis. It writes itself. Billy, who's your last guy?
I'm going to keep it on the homer train here, and it's going to be George Kittle. George Kittle has not finished outside the top 6 of the position at any point in his career outside of his rookie year, and last year was the lowest. It was number 6 the position. He's a value this year, especially with the potential trade of Brandon Ayuk. This is going to open up a massive amount of targets for George Kittle. I'd say draft him now while you can, while the shares are cheap, because if and when Brandon Ayuk is moved, Kittle is going to jump rounds.
And I actually changed my last guy mid-show because of the disrespect. I'm going to remind the good people about Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, I get him at tight end 10 right now on Underdog. It is a second half of the season play. Devontae Adams gets traded, guys. Brock Bowers to the absolute moon. And Billy, I'll make a prediction for our FFPC listeners. There's a lot of you out there. Next year, if you want Brock Bowers, you're going to have to use a second-round pick in FFPC drafts. That's where he's going to be at. Enjoy the discount right now and enjoy First Class Fantasy. Make sure you check out Bradley Stalder every week on Stack Hunters. What do you have coming out on Stack Hunters this week, Bradley?
Yeah, we're going to be reviewing some FFPC best ball draft boards on Thursday. We're going to be doing pros versus Joes next week. Theo, you did an awesome job with yours. Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison start, right?
Oh yeah. And a little
Jeez,
Kyle Pitts. And Kyle Pitts is my there, and a little Josh Allen, James Cook correlation, little cherry on top. So I like my team.
Shout out to Dan Williamson. We're going to be looking at some best ball strategies, identifying some strong teams, and giving you some strong best ball content as we're getting into August here.
Dan Williamson and I were co-champions of the Pros versus Joes a couple years back, along with JD with Goat District. Dan and you are going to crush it this year as well, Bradley. Billy Muzio, what do you have going on?
I just created this nice little banner down here at the bottom for everybody to review. That's first and foremost.
Disrespect after disrespect. Don't pay attention to Billy Muzio on that. Always use the code Theo, not the code Billy. Make sure you buy the draft kit, though. You can use the code Billy, use the code Bradley, use the code Theo, get the all-in package. The draft kit, we're going to update it. You're also getting the ADP movers, where we're going to talk about some of these players that are moving. Our draft kit continues to get better right up until opening kickoff. We're dropping content constantly at Player Profiler. Check it out, and we will see you next week right here at First Class Fantasy.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you, allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All-In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.